Hello friends, in this video we are going to discuss about the variables in JavaScript. Variables can be declared in four ways. First one is without using var, comma let and const keywords. One is without using var, let and const keywords. That is first type. And second type is using var keyword. And third type is using let keyword. Fourth one is using const keyword. So first we will discuss the variables declaration without using var, let and const keywords. So if I declare a variable name age is equal to 28, then if I print it using console.log of age, then you will see the output as 28. So age is equal age variable is assigned the value 28 and it got printed onto the console. You can see the output here, but how did it is able to print it? We should know that one. So when JavaScript engine encountered age is equal 28, then what it will do is it will attach this variable age variable to the window object. There is something called window object. So whenever before starting executing this code, JavaScript engine creates something called as global execution context and global object known as window object. Before executing any code, before executing JavaScript code, JavaScript engine creates global execution context and global object. This global object is different in browsers and different in Node.js environment. In case of browsers, the global object is window. The global object is window. So why I am telling this point is whenever the JavaScript encounters age is equal 28, then there was no type assigned with the age variable. So this age variable will be attached to the global object, that is window in case of browsers. So suppose if we execute it and let us open Windows Chrome, see if I inspect it, okay, if I go to source tab, if I kept debuggers here and here, okay, so now if I refresh it, okay, now the line is stopped right here. It is not executed this line was not executed. So see, when a global execution context is created in call stack, say this is anonymous pipt js4, the line is stopped at 4, it is not executed till now. A global execution context was created in the call stack. This is the global execution context, and I said along with the global execution context, a global object will be created. That is window in case of browsers. So the global object is this one, which was in the scope. This is the global object. This window in case of browsers. In case of Node.js environment, it is something else. So if I see here, you can see something called age 28, which was declared, which was attached to global object window. So this age is equal 28. Even though I did not declare with any type, it is getting attached to the global object called window. Okay, then then it will get printed to it will get printed as 28. So if I type window dot age, then we'll give it as sorry, window window dot age. Then you can see the output as 28. So we can infer that whatever the variables declared without any type are getting attached to the global object, something known as window in case of browsers. So this age variable will be attached to global object so that we can access using window.h, or we can access using window.h or this.h. This also points to the window. So this.h age will give also 28. So 28 will be printed. You can check this is equal this is equal to window or not. You can see it is printed true. So this always points to the window object. So we have concluded the variables declared without any type are getting attached to window object. So we can we can access anywhere in the program those global variables which are attached to window object. Now suppose I declare a function get name get age. Suppose I declare as age is equal to 28. I did not declare without any type varlet and const. Just I declared age is equal to 28. Now if I call that function, then what will happen is console.log of age. Suppose can you expect the output what it is? The output is going to be 28. Even though it is declared in a function, even though it is declared in a function, but it is accessible outside the function also. Why it is able to access outside the function? Because first in call stack, before executing this code, JavaScript engine creates a global execution context call stack. First, JS engine creates global execution context in call stack. So after it encounters function getAge, what it will do is it will attach this function getAge also to the something called as global object window. So it will attach getAge function will be attached to the window object before execution of the code. Okay, getAge function is attached to window object before executing any line of code. the memory is allocated for this function, we can say like that. So after calling this function, what will happen is this age JavaScript engine checks for this age variable whether it has any type in this function scope. This function scope, it will check for the type of this age, but it is unable to find out. So it will go to the outer function scope, means outer global scope. So in the global scope also there was no type declared. So what it will do is it will attach this age object to the global object window. So age will be attached to the global object called window. So that's it. So that's why if there is anything attached to global object means that is accessible to anywhere in the program. So that's why this age variable will get printed as 28. So that's why age is accessible because of it is getting attached to the window object. Okay. So if I execute this code, you can see if I inspect it, if I keep debuggers, okay, if I keep debuggers, I kept 5 at 5th line, 6th line, 8th line, and 9th line. Okay. Now what we will do is execute if we refresh it, currently it is at 8th. We see before executing any line of code, it created a global execution context in the call stack, which was presently at line 8, the JS code. So it does not execute this line till now. After, if I step over to the next line, then you can see another global execution context was created with name getAge, and currently it is under execution under 5th line, and you can see it got access to this global object. What are the variables declared outside the function, and something called as there is something called as local, which contains this reference that points to window object. So every function will get this reference. So now we should see where is the age variable. So if you see the global, there was no age was created. Here itself will be created if created. So there is no age variable in here. So if I go and press next line, see now, you can see that a global variable, global object, sorry, age variable was created with value 28. Yeah, you can see here age variable was created with value 28. So first it tries to find out in the local scope whether any type is assigned to the age. It won't find any, so it will go to the scope, global scope, and find out the any type it is declared. It won't find any, so it will attach to the global object window. So we are able to access outside the function. That's why we are able to access the age variable outside the function. So it will print age 28. if we see console, sorry, we go here and print it, it will print 28 because it was getting attached to the window object. That's why we were able to access the age variable. That's the point I decided to convey. Okay, now we have discussed the variables declared without varlet and const keywords. Suppose if we declared in a block like this, age is equal to 28, then what will happen is if I print console.log of age, I print it, then it will print 28. See, it will print 28. Why it? Because JavaScript engine will attach this age variable to the global object called window, and in window object there will be age property with value 28. This age is equal to 28. 28 will be attached to the global object. So that's why it's age variable outside the block also. This is called as block. It's will be accessible outside the block because of is getting attached to the window object. So okay, now we will discuss variables. Can we change the type? Suppose if we declare age is equal to 28, age is equal to 28. I can change this type later on. If I do like this, age is equal to 89, it works perfectly fine. Suppose if I print console.log age, console.log of age, see, it works perfectly fine and prints age 28 and age 89 here. Why? Because these variables are dynamically assigned. So if we change the type, it will automatically assign the type to that variable dynamically. JavaScript is dynamically typed language. There is no statically typed language. Statically checking is not present in this JavaScript. Only dynamically type checking is present. Okay. Now, if we are going to discuss next step, next point, that is variables declared with var keyword. So what happens when declared with var keyword is first point we have to remember is var is function scoped. What that it means is the variables declared in a function with var keyword are accessible only within the function, is not accessible outside the function. Suppose if I declare a function get age and I declared a var variable where age is equal to 28, then if I access this outside the function console.log of age, if I call get age function, if you see if I declare the variable with the function with variable name age is not defined, reference error. So variable declared with var keyword can't be accessible outside the function. The reference error age is not defined. Why it is won't be able to access? Because Age has function scope. That's why it won't be able to access outside the function. Yes. So that's why it's saying reference error age is not defined. Now, if I declare var variable var, where age is equal to 28, if I print here console.log of age, then it prints 28. The variables declared with var keyword in the global scope. This is the global scope. We should know the difference between global scope and local scope. First, I will explain that. Where age is equal to 28, and suppose there is a function get age return get name. Suppose names is equal named is equal to Ravi. Suppose return named, let it be where, because if we declare without where, it is going to attach to the global object. If I declare with where, then it is treated as local variable to that function. Okay. Now the global scope means this where is equal to 28 is global scoped, and get name function is global scoped. But the variables declared in that function get name are not global scoped. They are something else, local scoped. So what the JavaScript engine will do is the variables and functions declared in the global scope will be allocated memory before executing this code. Before executing these lines of code, JavaScript engine will allocate memory to this age variable and this getName function even before executing this code. So JavaScript engine will allocate memory to this getName function and this age variable even before executing this line of code. So how it will allocate is it will create something like age. It will initialize to undefined. It will create something like getName. It will store as key value pairs, and it will store this function total function get name. It will store this function total definition function get name where name is equal to Ravi return named. So the memory will be allocated to this function and this variable age even before executing this code. It will store like this. It will allocate memory in the form of key value pairs, that is age in case of where age undefined, and in case of function it store the function definition like this. So now what it will do is, if we see all the variables declared with var in the global scope will be getting attached to the global object window. We have to see it. In the global scope means the variables, this function will get memory, this age is equal 28 will get memory, and it will be getting attached to the window object. So let's see if I execute this code and if I run it, let's see what will happen. If I inspect it, console sources, okay, now I should call this function get name. Okay. Now if we see, if now see, presently a globe, I said before executing any line of code, JavaScript engine creates memory. So creates memory in window object. And I said a global execution context will be created and window object, something called window object will be created even before executing this code. Even before executing this code, this age property will be allocated in window object. See, this age was undefined even before executing this line of code. Presently, it was at 4. Script.js line 4. Means line 4 was not yet executed. Even before executing this JavaScript line 4, this variable age got memory in window object. Age was undefined. And if you see get name function, if we see get name function, you can see here. This is get name property. It it has allocated memory function get name. So this is getting attached to window object even before executing this line of code. Even before executing these total lines of code, already age got memory and this function get name got memory. But if you see this named will not get memory. See, here name is there, named is not there. See, this did not get allocated memory. Why? It's because it was not in the global scope. It is in the local scope of this function. So that's why it's not getting allocated. Only the variables and functions which are declared globally will be getting allocated memory. It will be attached to the window object. Window object. Now, if I execute next line, if I execute this fourth line, if I go to next function call, now age gas, this line was executed. If you see before it was age undefined, now age was initialized to 28. Now, if I execute this line get name function, it will create another execution context in call stack. If I execute this, see, if you see, it got another, before it was only global execution context. Now it created another execution context. Whenever we call a function, a execution context will be created and it will get global object and another one is local one. Local will always contain this reference and it got allocated. If you see, if you get the named was created in the local scope variable. Named was assigned the value undefined. So it was not getting attached to global. It was getting attached to something called local with a named with a property named and value as undefined. Okay, now if I execute this call, now this line was executed. Named was assigned Ravi. You can see here named was assigned Ravi. So after that, if I execute next line, return named. After that, you can see from call stack, sorry, from call stack that the execution context which was created earlier was removed because this function got completed. So the execution context will be present until the function gets completed. After completion, the execution context will be getting deleted, and all the values where named is called Ravi variables created with that execution context also are also getting deleted. So that's why we can't able to access this named variable outside the function. Suppose example, if I put console.log of named, if you see, if you print it into the console, it says name reference error named is not defined. Why? It's because this it will be created in the local scope of this function. So that's why we are not able to access this named, but we can able to access this age because it was declared in the global window object. So if I print it, it will print 28. So this is the major difference between variables declared in the global scope and the variables declared in the function scope. Now with var keyword, you can reinitialize the variable. Suppose var age is equal to 28. If I print var age is equal to 19, suppose var age is equal to, if I print it console.log of age, then it will print 19. So even if I declare two times with var keyword, it's not going to give any compile time error or runtime error. It prints age as 19. Why is because when first time it encounters with var age, it is getting attached to the global object called window, and when it sees another time, this just it overrides the age variable which was earlier created in global object window was reinitialized to 19, and it was reinitialized to 19, and when we console it, it prints 19. That was the main execution behind, that was the main logic behind execution of this line of code. Now the variables declared with var, suppose if I declared in a block var is equal 19, if I console it outside the block, then it will print age is equal 19, because the variables declared with var is also called as global scope. The block is declared in a global scope. This age declared with var will be getting attached to the window object. So age was initialized to 19. So I can be able to access this age variable outside this block. Okay. Okay. If you see, if I declare three variables where age is equal to age 1, suppose age 1 is equal to 18. I declare if I declare a function get age, if I declare age 2 is equal to 29, if I if I accept a parameter age, suppose let it be age 3, I'm not going to do anything with age 3. I simply declared it. Okay. Now if I create, if I call this function get age with 20 is 35, with function I call this function get age with value 35, uh, if I console.log it h1 console.log of h2, let's see now what the output is. If I print console.log of h3, you guess the output. The output will be age1 is 18, it prints 18 for this console.log of age1. For age2, it will be 29. For age3, it prints as reference, it gives reference error. Age3 is not defined. Let's see the output. See, it printed 18, 29, and for third line it gives reference error age3 is not defined. Why? It's because when the variables declared in the function get age, it won't be attached to the global object. The variables declared in this function are getting attached to the global object, but variables declared in the parameters here are not getting attached to the global object, but instead they are created in the local memory of this function. So that's why it's not able to we are not able to access outside this function. But the variables declared without any type, like this age2 is equal 29, are able to access, we can be able to access outside this function. But the variables declared in these parameters are treated locally and can't be able to access outside this function. So that's why we are getting a reference error age3 is not defined. Reference error age3 is not defined. Okay, if you access inside this function age3, it is perfectly fine. So it should print 35. I called this function with 35. H3 will be assigned value 35, but it will be allocated memory locally. So H3 will be getting value 35, and it was printed as 35. Now if I execute this code and see in browser, let's see what it will be happen. Okay, now if I put some debuggers, okay, I put some debuggers. If I execute this code, now see, before executing this any line of code, even before executing the first line of code, this line was not yet executed. Even before this line was not executed, a global execution created and a global window was created. And even before executing this code, this age was defined. Age one was allocated memory and it was initialized to undefined. You can see get age function also. Get age function was initialized to the function definition. You can see got function get age 3. But if you see age 3 was not there. Age 3 was not allocated memory. But if you see age 2 also did not get allocated memory till now. But if I execute this line of code, okay, next what it will happen is age 1 is getting initialized to 18. Okay, now it was in this line. If I execute this line, you see now another execution context will be created. So get age is another execution context which was created. And if you see that age 3 was variable was there. It is getting allocated memory in the local and is getting initialized to 35. Okay, initialized to 35. If you go to the next line, if I execute this line, for execution of this line, what will happen is age 2 will be declared in the global. See, now age 2 was getting initialized to 29. It is in the global scope. This age 3 was in the function's local scope. This age 2 was in the global scope. It was declared in the global scope. So I can be able to access this h2 outside this function also. But I can't able to access this h3 outside this function. That's the reason. If I go to the next line, if I print log of h3, then it will print h3 is equal to then it will print 35. Now if I go to the next line, I executed this line of code, so the execution context which was created earlier was got deleted, now removed from the call stack. Now there was only global window object and global execution context. I print age 1, age 2. Age 1 was already there in global object with the value 18, so age 1 value will be getting printed. Age 2 value was 29, so console.log of age 2 will print value 29. Okay. Okay, this is the main logic behind running this code. Now if I declare like this, where age is equal to 29, where age is equal to 34, what it will print is console.log of age, then what it will print is 34. It printed 35 because 34 because this age was getting allocated memory in the global object, and when it encounters another variable age, then it will simply reinitialize to 34, and outside the function, outside this block, the value will be 34 only because it was reinitialized here. Okay. Next things to discuss is uh, when the variables declared in varage is equal 29 can be accessible outside the inside the function. Suppose function get age, if you do console.log of age, if I call this function, then it will print 29. See, it was printed 29. Why? It's because the variable declared in this global scope will be accessible to the functions. But if I declare the same variable here, and if I access here, we can't be able to access. We can't be able to access because this variable declared with var will be accessible only the inside this function, not the outer scope. Okay. Next what we are going to discuss is there is something called as if block. It's same as a if I declare Suppose if I declare a var variable inside if block where age is equal to 29. If I console it outside the if block, then it will print a as 29. Why? It's because this var age is equal to 29 will be attached to the global window object, so it will be accessible outside this if block also. So that's a major difference. That's a major thing. Okay. Next thing is we'll discuss variables declared with let keyword. Now we have completed the variables declared with var keyword. One thing we should notice is, suppose if I create var age is equal to 18, 19, suppose if I console.log of age, console.log of age here, what it will print is, it will print undefined here and it will print 19 here. If I run it, it prints undefined and 19. Why? It's because I said before, even before execution of this line, 3 lines of code, a memory was created for this age variable with property age and value as 19. So that's why it's printing age value age was undefined and it prints age value 19 here. This is also called as hoisting. Even before execution of this code, memory was getting allocated this for variable age and we are able to access it. It's called as hosting. Okay. If I declare a function, suppose function get age console.log age is 19. If I run it, then it prints age undefined. Okay. If I call this function get age, now what it will do is already the memory is allocated for this age and function get age even before these lines of code was executed. This will print undefined. Whenever we call this function get age, it will successfully execute this line of code. See, it printed undefined and it's printed function age is equal 19. If I print this line of code, here also if I execute this line of code outside this after this function, then it says మెషిన్ ఆంటీ అంటే ఇప్పుడు even before executing this line of code get age, the age was getting printed 19 and when we call the function get age printed age is equal 19. Okay. Age is 19. Now so this function will be executed before this function getting declared or after this function getting declared. Both ways, this function will be executed smoothly. Now, this we have discussed about hosting. Hosting means memory will be getting allocated even before execution of this code, and we are able to access the variable even before declaring or initializing. Okay. Next thing is if I declare like this, where age is equal to function console.log age is equal to 19. If I do console.log age, what will you think the output is? The output will be undefined. Why? It's because the undefined. Why? It's because it's undefined. Why? It's because it will treat this function as variable, and the memory is allocated this for this variable even before executing this line of code. So age will get value as undefined, and this age will be getting assigned to a function that contains console.log of age is equal to 19. If I call this function console.log of age function, if I call this now, it says type error age is not a function, because even before executing this line of code, it does not know the age was initialized to a function. After execution of this line of code, it will come to know that age was initialized to function. Before executing this line of code, age was initialized to undefined. So it does not know that age is a function. So it will say type error age is not a function. If I call this age function before this function declaration, then it will say type error age is not a function. So one thing we should know, this one. Okay. Next, this is about more about where variable. There is something called as let variable. Variables declared with let. Variables declared with let variable or let and const or block scoped. This point we should keep in note. What's mean block scoped means variables declared within a block are accessible only within that block. Outside the block, it won't be able to access. Suppose if I declare let age is equal to 19, by console.log of age, it won't be allocated memory. It won't be accessible outside this block. So it says age is not defined. Reference error age is not defined. If I console it inside the block, console.log of age, I console it inside the block, then it prints 19. Why? It's because this let variable will be allocated a special memory called block, and age was initialized to 19 and it prints 19, and within this block only it is accessible. Outside the block it's not accessible. Suppose if I run it in the browser, let's see. If I inspect it, see now, now if I refresh it, see present execution of line is 4. Fourth line is not yet executed. But you see here something called as block. It was created in the global execution context. In global object is created, global execution context was created, and if something called as block it was created, and with age undefined. Now if I run this line of code, let age is equal 19, then it will initialize to age 19, and when I console.log of age, then it will print age is equal 19. As soon as this line of code was completed, as soon as I come out of this block, then the block was got deleted. See, you see scope. Previously there was something called as block. Now it was got removed. Now it was got removed. See, now it was got removed. So age variable will be also getting deleted. Age variable was also got deleted. Okay, so let was only block scoped. If I declare the let age is equal to 19, outside the outside the block, then it will be created in something called script region. See, so there is was something called a script, and global execution context was created. Window object was created. Along with it, script is created. In script age was, even before executing this line of code, the script area age was initialized to undefined. If I execute this line of code, then age will become 19, and when I console it, it will print 19. Age was printed as 19. Okay, this the variable declared out here. This let line const will not be attached to a window object. One thing we should know: let line const variables won't be attached to global object, as opposed to as opposed to var variables. Okay, this let as declared in the global scope will be attached to the script area. So in the script area, it will be available to entire program. Whereas when it was declared in the block scope, for example, like this, let age 2 is equal to 19. It will get memory in the block region. If I declared in a block, then it will be getting allocated in block region. If I declare here, it will be getting allocated in script region. If I declare in function get age, let age 3 is equal to 27, 29, let it be 25. Okay, see, If I call this function getAge, if I run it in a browser, if I put debuggers, if I put debuggers here, here, so let's refresh it. Now we can see a global execution context was created even before executing this line of code, and there was something called a script area. In that, age was undefined even before executing this line of code. If I go to the next line, it's created something called block, and with age 2 it is undefined. If I execute this line of code, then directly it will jump to getAge function. The block got deleted. Why? Because only it will stay up to this variable will store only up to within this block. Outside the block, it won't be able to we won't be able to access this age2 variable. Why? Because the block will be getting deleted after this, after execution of this line of code. So if we call getAge function, now it will create another context, execution context, global execution context. Saying getAge another global execution context. Now line 9 yet to be executed. Line 9 yet to be executed. So now the script region which was created here will be accessible to here. Script age 19 is accessible to here, and there will be something global memory, global object which will be accessible to this function, and there will be something called as local. Local age3 was defined even before executing this line of code. Age3 was getting memory undefined. See, and it contains this reference which points to window object. If I do next, execute this line of code, then age3 was getting initialized to 29. You see, age3 was getting initialized to 29. And if I come out of this function, this local memory, this script area, this global will be getting will get deleted as soon as the get age execution context was got deleted. See once. Now execution context was deleted. Only global execution context was presented. Global execution context contains global and something called script. Only these the variables declared in the global and script tag are accessible now. This age3 won't be accessible outside this function, and this age2 won't be able to access outside this block. Okay. I print console.log of console.log of age3, it gives an error. As it was declared in the block, it gives an error, reference error, age is 3 is not defined. This age3 will be the variables declared in the function with the let keyword, send the memory in the local. Here it is in the block, it is here in the script. In the for loops and all the blocks, if blocks, for loop blocks, and this block will getting memory in the block. For this, memory is created in script region. Script region. For this, memory is created in block region. It will get deleted as soon as block is completed. For this, memory is created in local and gets deleted as soon as function is completed, because it deletes the execution context related to this function. Next is I can't able to access outside this h3 variable outside this function, but I can access age here because it was present in the script region, so it will be accessible to the entire area. If accessible in this block also, it prints age as 19. If I did it from here, okay, now age 19 was printed. If I access from here, age 19 will be printed. So the variable declared in the script region will be getting allocated memory and will be accessible to the entire program. Okay, next, and let variable with let variables, we can't read we can't redeclare variables. Suppose let age is equal 19. If I create another variable let age is equal 29, it gives an error. It gives an syntax error. It won't be able to execute this line of code. It's giving a red mark. Even before I execute this code, it is giving, even before executing this code, it is giving an error, syntax error. Identifier age has already been declared. This identifier age has already been declared, it is saying. So we cannot redeclare the variables with let. Suppose if I create let age equal 19, if I create another variable in block, this is works perfectly fine. If I print console.log of age, console.log of age, what will we, what it will print is, it will print 29 and it will print 19. Why? It's because this age is equal 29 shadows this age is equal 19 variable. This process is called shadowing. Why? It's because this will be created in the script region. This variable will be created in the block region. So even if the age variable was accessible here, but this variable declared in the block will shadow this variable age declared with let. So age is equal 29 will be visible inside this block, but not age 19. But if I come out of this block, this let age is equal 29 will be getting deleted. Now I can access this age is equal 19 because it was declared in the script region. Script region will be accessible until the execution of the program. So 19 will be getting printed and 29 19 will be getting printed. If I declare suppose here as var age is equal 19 and let age is equal 29, it will be declared in the it will be getting initialized in the global object called window, and it was declared in the global scope, sorry, block scope. So when I print it, it will print 29 and 19. But if I do here let and here where, this type of shadowing is not allowed, because if I declare here where age is equal 29, if I this will be accessible outside the function, outside this block also, where age is equal 29. So which one to take, this, whether to take this one or whether to take the age declared here? JavaScript engine confuses, and it is not correct shadowing. It is illegal shadowing in Java. It says identifier age has been already been declared, because even if I declare here, the scope will be outside also for this variable age is equal to 29. For let age, anyhow it was in the script region, the scope was entire program, and for this where age equal to 29, the scope will be also the entire program. So it concludes that age was all once again declared. So it will says identifier age has already been declared. Gives a syntax error. So we can't able to run even one line of code directly before running the program itself. It says you can't do this type of shadowing. It's called also called as shadowing. With the where, if you declare where here and let here, that is perfectly fine. But if you declare let here and where here, it won't work fine. If you declare where here and where here, it works perfectly fine. If you declare let here and let here, it works perfectly fine. But here if you use that and here you use, if you use where, then a problem arises. So it is illegal shadowing. Now we declared about let shadowing. Suppose if I declare let age is equal 19, if I try to access this age, even before executing this code, what will happen is it says reference error. We cannot access age before initialization. See, reference error cannot access age before initialization. Why it says? Because this age variable will get memory undefined, but we can't able to access, because this age variable will be getting memory allocated in different region other than a global object called window. If I declare with where age is equal 19, the variables will be getting memory within the global object called window. But if I declare with let variable, the memory was getting allocated in another region. We can't able to access even before it is got initialized. So it says cannot access age before initialization. This is we also called as temporal dead zone. This is also called as temporal dead zone. The time between the variable age memory got allocated and the age variable got initialized. The time between the age variable got allocated the memory and the age where it was initialized is known as temporal dead zone. Also define it as we cannot access, the memory was allocated but we cannot access the age variable before initialization. That is called temporal dead zone. The place between the starting of the line of the code to the variable where it is assigned the value, that is known as temporal dead zone. The place where the age variable got allocated memory, the place where it was initialized. The time between them is known as temporal date. We cannot access the values declared with age because it got allocated memory in different region. That place we can't access. Okay. Same goes with const also. It says cannot access age before initialization. That was called as temporal date zone. Now now what we will do is now we have discussed about let keyword in depth. Now if we declare with const, now we will discuss about const. If I declare const with some name, then must be initialized to some value. You you can't keep like this. Just declaring is not enough. It must be initialized. It will give us a syntax error missing initializer in the const declaration. So you must initialize. Just declaring is not enough for const variable. We have to compulsory initialize here. So now it perfectly works fine. If I do console.log of age, it prints 19. Now what the advantage we get with const to keyword is you can't reassign the value. Suppose I can't keep age is equal 28 here. Console.log of age. It won't give any syntax error, but it gives an type error, which was assignment to constant variable. You can't once again initialize another value. Already you have initialized to 19. You can't reinitialize the value. That is illegal in case of const variables. So const variables must be declared only once and at the time of declaration only. You can't reassign the values. But you can see if you see in terms of list. Hello, hi. Suppose you can change in const arrays. You can change this array values. See, if I do console.log of age, console.log of age, you can see the hello was replaced with by, but we can't able to access reinitialize this age variable. Suppose if I try to do age is equal to 1 2, if I do console.log of age, see it says assignment to constant variable. So in case of arrays, how this const works is this age variable we can't reinitialize, but we can change the contents of this array. Okay, and in case of objects, let's see, let's declare a1, b2, c3. Okay, now if I declare console.log of age of a, what it will print is chase age of a is not defined, but we should keep this in. like this. Okay, age of a is 1. It is getting printed correctly. Now if I access age.a, console.log age.a, it also prints 1. If I try to change the property a value to 10, suppose age.a is equal to 10. If I print again age.a, see it prints 10. If I print age object, it gives A10 B2 C3. So objects, with const objects, you can change the underlying values of these properties, but we can't reinitialize the age. Suppose if I declare age is equal to something called as D56 E57, if I print console.log it, if I do console.log, then we can't able to do it because it was declared with const keyword. So the property values we can be able to change, but we can't reinitialize to another object. Okay, that is a major difference. And the scope scope of const variables is same as let. If I declare outside the if I declare outside global scope, then it was allocated memory in script region, and if I declared it in block, then it will be getting allocated memory in block region. The scope will be same as let keyword, variables declared with let keyword. If I declare a function, let's declare a function test. If I declare a function with name test, let there be a two variables, where a is equal to hello, let b is equal to boy. Let's see, const c is equal to hi hello boy. Let's see. Now these three variables will be getting memory in local region. If I access console.log of a, then it prints undefined for this. If I should call this test function, I called this test function, it's printed undefined. It's printed undefined. If I try to access b, I can't able to access. I can't able to access. Cannot access b before initialization. But it got allocated memory in local scope, but we can't able to access. They are considered to be in temporal jet zone. These let variables and const variables declared in a function, we can't able to access before declaring them. We can't able to access after declaring and initializing them. After initializing these let and const variables, we can be able to access them. After here we can access, but here before declaration and defining them, we can't able to access. Okay, perfectly works fine. Now there is something called shadowing. If I do if true, let ti is equal to high, where b is equal to goodbye. This type of shadowing we can't. We can shadow where using let in a block, but we can't shadow let variable using where, because where variable will be getting scope to the function, but let variable should be in this local scope only. So you will be getting two values, two variables with b, and JavaScript engine can't able to decide which one to use, and it says b variable b has been already declared. Execute this. It says syntax error, identifier b has already been declared. Okay. Next thing is the where let variables. I declare where let variables without initializing them. By default, they will be stored as undefined. Console.log of num2, they are stored as undefined. This is all about variables declared with let, where, and const. Okay. Uh, okay, sir.